Welcome to my module on formators. I want to start this module by discussing something that's very frustrating to me. Several suburbs in the Chicago area do not have street signs, and when I have to go there, I'm totally lost and have to stop in several gas stations to get clarity about where I am and where I'm going. Also, the people who live there have to give me instructions by signposts. For example, they'll say, go to the Wendy's, turn left, at the Home Depot, turn right, and so on. So the whole point of it is that we're all frustrated because there are no road signs. And this chapter deals with this issue in your writing. As I have mentioned elsewhere, and you've already seen this chart probably a couple of times, this chart depicts our study of writing samples that have been submitted to us for evaluation. The aggregate totals are for 2,800 and some writing samples, and gives us a pretty good picture of the problems that we as business writers face. When we look at this, what we see is that organization is very low. In other words, writings do not seem organized. And formators are the principal way to do that. And we will be talking about that as we go forward. Here is a list of cities. See what you can make out of it. You probably struggled with the list, trying to find out what the pattern was of the list. For example, did you decide that they were in different states? Or were you trying to figure out if they were on the water? Or perhaps you found them to be similar in industries, and so on and so on. Your mind went to work trying to figure out what the meaning of this list was. In other words, you tried to understand the inner logic, or, if you will, the organization. How did the list have some sort of unity, some sort of organization? That's the question. This is a list of the top 5 cities in the United States in terms of stress, with the most stressful being at the top and the least stressful being at the bottom. As you can see from the citation, it's provided by the United States Conference of Mayors. Suddenly, you see all of the pieces fall into place because you now have the structure of the list, if you will, the organization. And this is the value of organization, and it's an important part of the process. And when we write, we often do not provide organization for the reader. So the reader has to kind of try to figure it out himself, if he or she was willing to devote the time. Most aren't. So, writing, and of course language, transfers meaning. And to get meaning, we have to have 2 elements. Data, facts, if you will, and organization, structure, showing how these facts or data are related to each other. So when that happens, and we can have both, then we have meaningful data or information. When we write, we want to provide meaningful data, which means we have to provide the data, facts, and organization, the structure of how these facts fit together. Let's look at the word formator. What other words do you see in the word formator? And how do they relate to organization? Now, can you take a guess as to what a formator does? What its function is? You probably have guessed that a formator formats information. Imagine, if you will, what kind of page of output we will have from a printer if we fail to send the printer formatting instructions. We would have a jumble of messes, all kinds of letters and paragraphs and all thrown together without being able to tell which is which and what is what. That's what formators help the reader do. Formators help the reader understand the structure of his or her communication. Now here's the formal definition of formators. Formators are words, phrases, paragraphs, and other visual structures that communicate to the reader how the writing is organized. Now this is important. Other visual structures, for example, tables, bullets, headlines. These are all other visual structures that communicate to the reader how information is organized. If you read the professional press, whether on the web or in magazines or in newspapers, you will find that they all do this. They all have formators telling you, the reader, what information is available where and how it fits to the rest of the piece. Second, using formators, we can create expectations in the reader and prepare the reader for what is coming. And this can be used to create interest and suspense. This aspect is a little more sophisticated, but it's important. If you tell the reader that the first paragraph contains information about a meeting, the reader will have that expectation. So the expectation is that the information about the meeting is in the first paragraph. This is important because the reader has been told what to expect. Now, the fact that the reader is being told what to expect, we can exploit that to create interest and suspense. So we can say, for example, in the middle of the email, that the final paragraph contains fantastic savings and is worth reading. So now we're creating interest in the reader, thinking, what is fantastic savings? What are they? Let me go check. Let's look at some formators we hardly notice, but we're glad to have. Table of contents. That's a formatter. It formats the whole book, or the whole article, or the whole section. Headlines of sections in articles. That's very helpful because we realize as we read, oh yeah, this is about that, and this is about that, and this is about that. So we have some clarity about how the article is organized. Margin notes is also very helpful sometimes. Menus. Menus in restaurants format a meal. Menus on the computer format software. So they are helpful in clarity. And then we have the introduction to 60 Minutes, where 60 Minutes plays a 10-second or 15-second clip, part of an interview that's coming up. So we are told in advance what the interviews are, and we can know that we're looking forward to it, and hopefully interest and suspense has been created in us to hang around and watch. So the question is, can you name some other formators? And they're all around us all day long. One of the challenges that many of us face is that we have grown up with the impression that there's only one way to organize a piece of writing. And at the same time, every piece of writing has to have the same organization. Unfortunately, this is not true. Writings can be organized in many different ways, but they have to have certain elements in common. Some of those elements are being covered here. Nonetheless, rather than trying to shoehorn your ideas into a structure that does not work or into a way of organizing that does not work, let yourself do a minus draft and see what comes out, and then find the structure that you have and underline it. Do I tell my reader how my writing is organized? This is the key question and the reason for formators. Many managers over the years have come to me and shown me a piece of writing and said, look, this is disorganized. And I read it and I see that there is an organization there, there's a structure, there's an order, but formators are lacking. So one experiences it as disorganized because we have no road signs. So that's exactly like I am when I'm out in the suburbs that have no road sign. So it would be so helpful if the person put in some formators to clarify his or her organization. So to take the statement here, if your writing is organized, but the reader doesn't know what the organization is, the reader will consider it disorganized. That's important. do I tell my reader how my writing is organized? It really doesn't matter how you have organized your writing. What matters, however, and is very important, is that the reader know how you have organized your writing. So let the reader know how you have organized your writing, and the primary tool to do this are formators. Let's look at several examples of different types of formators. The first example on this page is the outline of a class, or agenda, if you will. So it's a bulleted list explaining what will come first, second, third, and so on. So again, this helps the reader keep the structure of the day in his or her mind as they participate in the class. Example 2 is the formator for an email. We nowadays see formators in almost all emails, but in the early days of the use of email, in the mid-90s up to about the mid-2000s, very few emails had formators. They were generally just lists of items. But now we're getting more sophisticated and we're using formators to make it clear what's in the email. Example 3 illustrates margin notes. These are very helpful. In this case, they indicate what steps are being taken at what point. And it clarifies the steps 1, 2, 3. Another form of visual structures. Here is Leo Tolstoy's opening line to Anna Karenina, which serves both to discuss what the topic is and at the same time format 1,000-page novel. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And then Tolstoy goes on to tell the stories of 3 unhappy families and 1 happy family. It is said that it took him 3 years to write that. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. Example 5 is a table of rows and columns. This, of course, can communicate information, and it is very simple to see the information. So this is a formator. As I talked about at the beginning, formators are other visual structures. Here's an example of other visual structures. And of course, all of the graphs and so on would work here. The pie chart, the linear graph, the bar chart, all of that would be relevant here. I had written a play, and I wanted the actors to more quickly understand the relationships amongst the characters that they were playing. And so I drew this little chart, which displays the characters and their relationships. And so the actors could quickly grasp how they fit together in this play. Since one of the functions of formators is to create suspense, let's clarify the difference between suspense and surprise. Surprise is when something happens and we don't expect it at all. It just comes out of the blue and blows our mind and makes us completely freeze for a moment, or giggle or laugh, or any number of reactions. But in any event, surprise is unexpected. On the other hand, suspense is expected surprise. In other words, we are given clues by the writer about what might be expected. And when we watch movies and television shows, we see this all the time. We are teased by heightened music, by clues, by hands doing things without knowing who is doing it, and so on. Basically, suspense is when we have a set of facts that tell us something is going to be happening, but the facts are incomplete. So, for example, we are told when and where something will happen, but not who will be there or who will be affected. We are told who will do it, and we are told when the person will do it, but we're not told where the event will happen. And so we will watch the TV show or read the book or sit there and get involved in the movie because we are waiting for something to happen. That is suspense. Formators exist at all levels of writing and help, therefore, make the writing more specific and clear about how the information is organized. So we might expect then that the first level of formators would be on the overall level, where we have an opening formator that usually comes right after the main idea, and then milestone formators or transition formators throughout, and then a closing formator or a summary at the end. These three levels make a piece of writing strong because the reader will be less confused and will also understand the linkages between your data. On the paragraph level, we also see formators. There's an opening formator that usually comes after the topic sentence, and then there are transitions between sentences, such as the words however, although, in contrast, as a result, and so on. And then there's the transition to the next paragraph to create a smooth flow of information and logic. Finally, we have formators on the sentence level. There are two, conjunctions and prepositions. Conjunctions explain the relationships between ideas. Prepositions tell about the time and place of things. So on the table, before the door, underneath the cupboard, whereas conjunctions would tell you either, or, both, and so on. It is important to keep in mind that formators are a very important part of the communication process. Unfortunately, many of us don't use them, and so our readers are punished by confusion.